A merry cat, a hungry cat, a sly cat. A bear, a sad lion at the zoo. Almost before they can walk and prattle, human beings feel the need to create. And how different all these kiddies are. They observe the world around them and try to picture it as best they can. A construction yard, the first snow. A stadium. The 20th century, the 21st century. These young people do not know we are filming them, and we'd like to beg their pardon. We came to one of Moscow's universities on entrance examination day. We set up the camera in the yard, and then we tried to observe how students await results. The different ways people react, the different ways they wait. Study and character. Each boy and then each girl reacts in his own special way. Here in Moscow, to take exams, you wear the oldest shoes you have. And especially, you don't go near the hairdresser under any circumstances. That would be asking for trouble. And here, at last, the results. The difference in human reactions is really amazing. Someone is waiting for these girls, or at least it looks like it. Waiting in a variety of different ways. Unless love makes everybody look alike. This is Moscow. And this is Warsaw. There are a lot of people down there, and each has his own outlook on life. Each is a human being. For any mother, her own child is the best in the world. And for any child, his own mother is the best in the world. The prettiest. The one and only one. My mother is the prettiest. That's the theme of this set of children's drawings. Mine is a dancer. And mine is a singer. And for this little boy from Berlin, his mother is the prettiest. And it's the same for this little boy from Moscow. Deutschland über alles, reads the inscription on this pillar. Germany above everything. Germany above all. In Europe, new museums have recently appeared, built on the sites of former concentration camps. The wooden barracks have long since been burned to the ground. Only the chimneys still stick out from the grass. However, the stone buildings are still there, overgrown with weeds and wildflowers. But you can walk into this barrack and take a look around. The stench of humanity has long since disappeared. Thousands upon thousands died here. Now, visitors scribble on the walls as they do everywhere. Stark and cold are the ovens with their freshly painted doors. And the chief of the crematorium's bathroom is not working. He had it installed right here, next to the ovens. In this glass case lie these tons of women's hair. It no longer looks like hair, all tangled and matted up like felt. In this glass case, thousands of artificial legs and arms. In a huge bunker are children's potties. The mothers who came here with their children expected to live. This neat hill of ashes, all that's left of 1 million human beings. Of course, these too are human beings, or rather they think they are. But that's the crowd, the masses, as Hitler liked to call them. The crowd. Here, the individual counts for nothing. What does count? Dozens, hundreds of thousands, millions of men. An armchair is set out for the Führer. Only one for him. Now he's going to sit down. He sits. About this time, in an ancient German city, a unique copy was made of Adolf Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, that Bible of German fascism. For the cover, special calves were selected, German calves from the purest German stock. First they were skinned, then these hides were fashioned on ancient hide stretchers. Here you see an 18th century hide stretcher. Only master craftsmen whose forefathers and backgrounds had been checked for at least 10 generations worked on these hides, fashioning them into the most durable, high-quality parchment. A group of special draftsmen hand-wrote the book with special India ink and special pens and special characters selected after lengthy discussions in dozens of ministries. These pictures were taken from the Kulturfilm entitled The Book of the German People. There you can hear the narrator. It's a very long Kulturfilm, of course, and we've borrowed only a very few shots from it. As for the contents, it looks as if not all had read it attentively enough. If all the Germans had fully grasped its meaning, it might well have happened that Germany's fate would have been quite different. A group of miners went down into an ancient German mine shaft and extracted enough mineral by hand. The ore was smelted in special ovens and fashioned into binding covers for the book. These were sheets of highly tempered stainless steel. Here they are being hammered. And now they'll be fixed to the parchment cover, and the book will be ready. It was made to last 1,000 years without deteriorating, tarnishing, or rusting. For that is the time Adolf Hitler's Third Reich was to have lasted, 1,000 years. Now the book will be locked into a special case, the sarcophagus. There. Then it will be buried in a specially built mausoleum. Adolf Hitler was known to the police as early as 1912. Here is his police card. He was the son of a minor civil servant, a failure as a painter, a corporal during World War I. After the war, he became a paid informer of the Reichswehr. Yes, this notorious pub crawler was paid to spy on the activities of the German National Socialist Workers' Party that came into existence shortly after the war. Well, as to what extent this party was a workers' party or a socialist party, you can judge by these shots from old newsreels, by these parading gentlemen, and by those in front of whom they are marching. But Hitler felt at home in the ranks of the party, so he became a member number 7, but decided that at all costs he would become number 1. Originating from the middle class, Hitler perfectly understood the aspirations and the mentality of his like. He was a clever demagogue. He soon became the party's foremost orator and then the Führer of this Nazi party. About this time, these lads in uniforms started cropping up in the streets of German towns, as well as these swastikas. These are the stormtroopers, the party's shock troops. They were recruited amongst the small shopkeepers. Well, here's a butcher. And here's a baker coming out. They may have been office workers or shady characters. Hitler didn't even stop at jailbirds. He once said, I need men with strong fists, without principles to get in the way, in case we need to bump anybody off. These men with strong fists, here they are. And even if they should pinch your watch, added Hitler, what of it? The rise of the new party awoke a certain interest in the lower classes. The new uniform impressed them, so did the bands, the parades, and the emblems. In the early days, Hitler was hard put to carry off the part of a Führer, as you'll see it now. But he trained hard. Here he is practicing speech-making in front of a mirror. These are pictures from Hitler's personal album. And now you'll see how he put all his training to practice. He performed often and promised a lot. He promised prosperity for all, the return of the German territories lost through the Versailles Treaty, lower rentals for tenants, higher rentals for landlords, to end competition for chain store owners. To small shop owners, he promised to do away with chain stores. Yes, he was lavish with promises. Sieg Heil! Gatherings and parades of Hitler's shock troops were getting more and more impressive. All this was very expensive, of course, but the party was financed, and most generously financed, by secret sources of revenue. For instance, during one of the party gatherings at that time, 1,200,000 Frankfurter sausages were eaten. And in 1934, at a similar gathering, the figure had reached 2.5 million. The Reichswehr is always seen in each one of these shots. Ceremonials and uniforms were very much stressed. Here's the ceremony of the blessing of the flag. Look at Hitler's face, how swiftly he has grown up, so to say. And as to the parades, they began to take on threatening proportions. They already had all the earmarks of official demonstrations, even though the Nazi party was not yet in power. To achieve the same, the Nazis needed Hindenburg, and here he is. Senior general of the German Empire, and the Kaiser's closest companion at arms, fate decreed that Hindenburg be made president of the German Republic. Maybe Hindenburg didn't even know what a republic was. But I beg your pardon. Oh, yes, he looks lost. Oh, well, no matter. He'll be out of it, I think. Yes, there he is, back in the right path. Yes, he didn't understand what a republic was, however. He was its president. As an aristocrat, he despised Hitler. He called him corporal. But in 1933, Hindenburg received a letter from representatives of big business, big capitalists. This letter was, to put it bluntly, signed by 2,000 million marks, ordering Hindenburg to promote Hitler to the rank of Chancellor of the German Reich. Hindenburg was unwilling to nominate Hitler, but 2,000 million marks, well, you'll see now how he parts with 20 pfennigs, and you'll understand what 2,000 million marks meant to him. There we are. He's parted with it. And now he neatly closes his purse. At any rate, Hindenburg named Hitler Chancellor, and he was greeted with the Nazi salute. Later on, Hitler said, "We got the best of the old boy, and in only 3 weeks." But he thanked Hindenburg most respectfully for the service rendered. And here's Hitler at a meeting of the cabinet. At the start, he behaves discreetly. He refuses to sit down first, invites the others to do so. His ministers? Goering, von Papen, Blomberg, Frick, Guggenberg. His fellow party members and his financiers. Hitler is seated. From this moment on, Germany embarked on a new destiny. Suppose we have a look at what was being filmed during these years, the years when Hitler was coming to power. Here are newsreel shots taken at random. The King of England, George V. The ex-king of Spain. A very intellectual face. The king of Norway, probably launching a new ship. The queen of the Netherlands, leaving her private yacht. The king of Sweden, playing tennis as usual. The ex-German Kaiser, Wilhelm II, feeding ducks. In France, Briand. The hero of World War I, Clemenceau, nicknamed the Tiger. French President Lebrun with his family. Foremost Western statesmen were then persuaded that once in power, Hitler would follow a very moderate policy. Look at the little fellow. How could European rulers suspect the part the little fellow was to play in all their fates? Hitler and others visit the opera. These shots were also considered important news items at the time. A little speech in honor of Hindenburg. Looks a little bit like Hindenburg, don't you think? These seals, of course, were not included in the newsreel because of the resemblance. It's just that the public is always amused to spot similarities between people and animals. That's why these seals come into the newsreels, along with kings and Hitler. The 20th century stays the 20th century. It's only its first third that is drawing to an end. The population of the Earth is just short of 22,000 millions, or perhaps just a little bit under after these races. This isn't 1966, it's 1934. But it is misleading, isn't it? Another 20th century institution, the famous jazz singer Cab Calloway, star of the 30s. A smashing hit of the 30s, sung in all the capitals of the world, here in New York.
Как люблю я вас, как боюсь я вас, знать увидела вас, я не в добрый час.
And here it's London, or maybe Paris. Everything seemed to be going on as usual, except perhaps that Marlene Dietrich didn't go back to Germany for political reasons. Here she is being interviewed.
But nothing to say.
now between pictures, modeling clothes for charity.
It was by that waterfall of wearing the most romantic black costume. It was the one with a large velvet hat. The black lace gloves made her hands even more graceful than ever. Such interesting pearl jewelry.
Next door, a beauty contest for the most perfectly proportioned Venus. What about you for Venus? Now that's better. Yes. These other Venuses make their living in another way. One must eat, after all. New York, of course. Even here, one feels the 20th century. Here, too. Police training with dummies, a merry sight. The same thing, but this is for real. This is London. And here there was a reason for the riots. It's because of a meeting of the Fascist Party of England with Mosley, its own Führer. There he is, see him? Right in front of the banner, with a moustache. He's on his way to the meeting and he intends to make a speech. The Londoners want to beat him up, but he has strong police protection. Marseille. King Alexander of Yugoslavia arrives in France, the official guest of Barthou, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Barthou, you see, deeply mistrusted Germany and sought closer relationships with the Soviet Union as well as with the Balkan states. Both Barthou and King Alexander were shot down in the car, and the murderer was killed on the spot, killed by the police. There's a striking similarity between this and the Kennedy murder. Later on, it was found out that the murder of Alexander had been organized in Berlin, but at that time, no one knew about it. Barthou's successor was Laval. Laval was definitely pro-German. Later on, he was tried and condemned to death for high treason. French politics had radically changed. However, let's get back to Germany. Let's see what's happening there. In Germany, for 3 nights after Hitler came to power, there were torch parades known throughout Germany as Fackelzüge. I gazed at this flaming torrent, and I asked myself, what was the true, what was the deep meaning of these fiery demonstrations? Of course, it was to show the new regime's might, to threaten, and to strengthen its hold on the people's imagination. But there was more to it than that. Above all, the main thing about these Fackelzüge was that they helped to turn men into savages, and to do so with a maximum of pomp and ceremonial, so that becoming savages, they felt themselves almost heroes. A savage ready to do anything was badly needed by the Third Reich, needed above all for the destruction of any opposition to Nazism, for the destruction of anything that stood in its way. The first blow was struck at the communists, throw them into concentration camps and prisons. After the communists, the social democrats, the trade union leaders, the workers, the scientists, the magazine and newspaper columnists, the radio commentators, in short, all who dared to think otherwise than Hitler. So, gazing at this fiery swastika, I can hardly believe that Germany, with its rich cultural heritage, could have been ruled by such illiterate, smugly narrow-minded men who did their best to change human beings into hysterical savages. Here are books being burnt. They were burning them at that time in the courtyards of all the universities. In front of the Berlin University, Goebbels raved and ranted. He was making a most high-flown speech, speaking of the triumph of the German spirit, of the new culture. And to the tune of this speech, students, together with Goebbels' henchmen, were hurling books into the flame. Whose works were they burning? They were burning Tolstoy and Mayakovsky, Voltaire and Anatole France, Romain Rolland, Jack London. And all through it, Goebbels went on speaking, while the best German writers went up in flames too. Heine was burned, together with Thomas and Heinrich Mann, together with Feuchtwanger, Remarque, Bertolt Brecht. Well, of course, they burnt Marx, Engels, Lenin. They burnt the works of the greatest scientists of non-Aryan origin. Human thought went up in flames. What was left? Well, the Academy of Sciences was left, although it took on a new shape. Goebbels appears again, introducing the Academy's new president, Seyss-Inquart. Remember Seyss-Inquart? There he is. Gauleiter of Austria, mass executioner. He's taking office. Seyss-Inquart, Gauleiter of Austria, nothing but a common executioner, making his acceptance speech. It's the audience that's interesting. And here is the Law Academy, Frank speaking. About the same sort of audience as at the Academy of Sciences. By the way, this Law Academy passed a resolution whereby love of the Führer became a legal concept, which means that those who do not love him can be tried according to the Penal Code. Now this is a meeting of landowners. In spite of appearances, it has nothing to do with the Law Academy. Minister Darry has the floor. He addresses the new generation of landowners. You might call them the plowmen of the Third Reich. Here, all the top men of the Reich assembled to greet Hitler. We tried in vain to find a single civilian, to spot just one civilian overcoat or hat.
Der Führer! Sieg! Heil! Sieg! Heil! Sieg! Heil!
Hitler once said, one day, somewhere in the world, a human skull will be found, and it will be claimed that it's the skull of our distant ancestor. The Neanderthal man cannot be the ancestor of the German. We are direct descendants of the ancient Greeks. By and all, the proportions of the skull were of major importance in the racial theory. Here you see a lecturer. He's explaining where to find normal, or regular skulls, Nordic that is, Aryan or Germanic skulls. He has a regular skull in one hand and an irregular skull in the other, or if you prefer, Nordic and non-Nordic. These are men of the chosen race with regular skulls. Regular skull, regular skull, a whole row of regular skulls. And here's an irregular skull, that of Alexander Pushkin, not only a Slav, but also tainted with Negro blood. Or, for instance, Leo Tolstoy, irregular skull, not to mention Karl Marx. Anton Chekhov, irregular skull. Mayakovsky, irregular skull. And what an irregular head Einstein had. You can see that at a glance. Now, here's a regular skull for you, Martin Bormann. They say that he and his regular cranium are still hiding out somewhere in the Argentine. Or Röhm, for instance, What a delightful skull. Striker, Hitler's main racial propagandist, witch hunter, an anti-Semite. It's evident that the shape of his skull is absolutely ideal. He demands that Germany should be purged of irregular skulls. Germany begins its self-purification. Some people with irregular skulls were smart enough to get out of Germany while the going was good, but very few were able to save their skins. They wore special badges. Here they are getting off a boat in some foreign country. But those who refused to leave their motherland, or didn't dare to, had cause to regret it. This is a film made by order of the National Socialist Party on how marriages should be conducted between pure Aryans. Are their papers in order? Asks the doctor. Yes, they are. Is the bride here? Here she is. Let her come in. Here are the bride and groom. The girl enters. The bridegroom waits outside.
Mein Fräulein.
Fräulein, says the doctor, when two young people get married today, they have to face heavy responsibilities. But let's leave the good doctor and see what an authority on the subject has to say. This is what Kaltenbrunner, Minister of State, said in one of his speeches. All German women, married or single, having less than 4 children, must beget more with pure-blooded Germans, married or single. Every family with 4 children must place the husband at the disposal of the cause. See how the girl is listening with rapt attention. We don't know whether the bridegroom is willing to accept Kaltenbrunner's declaration, or this newcomer either. But here's another quote from no less an authority on the question than Hitler himself. One day, I wanted to do something for the Berchtesgaden population. They showed certain weaknesses due to lack of racial purity. So I stationed my Leibstandard regiment in the vicinity for a year, and the result was a crop of hale and hearty children. We must also come to the help of the Bavarian and East Prussian population. Nothing would improve the strain in these regions faster than the presence of some of our elite troops. But that's not all. Listen to Hitler again. Generally speaking, in 100 years, the elite of the German nation will be the product of SS activity. Activity of a rather specialized nature, to be sure, but highly useful in the breeding of racially pure children. Well, the consultation seems to be coming to a close.
Nun wollen wir uns mal Ihre Papiere ansehen.
Everything seems to be in order. And here comes the bride. Congratulations, says the doctor. The bridegroom is overjoyed. Thank you, doctor. Thank you again, yes. Don't thank me, answers the doctor. Thank the Fräulein's ancestors. And now they can be married. A few years later, during the war, a practical new form of the nationalistic idea was hit upon. Soldiers on furlough were provided with specially constructed collapsible cribs. Here is one of those cribs. The soldiers were instructed to present these cribs to their girlfriends. In addition, soldiers were given a certificate specifying that starting a baby was a patriotic act. Here comes a soldier with his furlough equipment. And Himmler even gave out a most detailed special order saying in substance, girls have no right to say no to a soldier. This girl apparently did not say no. These are officials paying her a visit. They offer her a little bouquet, and now she will receive a certificate guaranteeing that her bloodstream is pure, and so is the child's. These babies were called gifts for the Führer. But suppose we go back a few years now. During the 30s, in all the German cities, there were masquerades organized by the government with music and parades. Their purpose was probably to demonstrate that 2,000 years of colorful German history were just a prelude to the Third Reich. Evidently, fascism starts with a national superiority complex, when a man starts believing he's better than the rest, if only because he is a German. It's hard to believe that these peaceful demonstrations are actually a prelude to the mass extermination of others. And yet, that's what they are. Let's look into the future once more. This is the official report of the Warsaw police chief Stopp, after the Jewish population of Warsaw had been wiped out. To make this report possible, numerous documents were attached. Photographic documents of human beings condemned to extermination and who were in fact exterminated. This was part of the report. They are already prepared to die. Waiting for the volley. Waiting. The report is signed Major General of the Police Force, Stopp. Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer. One people, one empire, one leader. One Führer, in other words, perfect unity. And to demonstrate this unity of purpose, on specified days, everybody eats communal soup. It's part of the Winter Aid program. There's even military music to help it down. Ein Topf. That means the same pot, enormous pots, a thin broth for everyone, and a few pfennigs in the collecting box. So, of course, it's not the money that matters, or the gruel, but the proof of their loyalty. You eat the communal soup, and you express solidarity with the ideals of the Nazi Party and the government. And it's so simple to eat a plateful of soup and drop in a few coins. They even did it at Hitler's headquarters. Of course, the atmosphere was a little more refined. The Führer in person even visited this soup kitchen from time to time. True, I don't think he ever had much of this soup because, strange as it may seem, Hitler was a vegetarian. But we do know that he contributed to the kitty. 1 mark? Ah, maybe another. Who knows? Yes, it might. Oh, this is too solemn an event to miss. Patience. No, I guess we're too optimistic. Ah, well. Rocking. That also is a kind of national custom. True, in any case, this rocking brings about a feeling of common action, of togetherness. And besides, it helped the little man to forget about the troubles that probably weighed on him from time to time. Just rock a little and you'll feel better. In those years, rocking was in truth practiced on a large scale for the sake of the party. Leaders of the party, there's Goering, took part in these popular amusements. Archery, a national pastime. Goering draws the bow. Bullseye. Well, I don't quite know how it happened, but it's a bullseye and somebody must have fixed it. He's offered the traditional stein of friendship. Like it or not, you must drink it down for unity's sake. Heil, the Reichsmarschall drinks. That's that. He's wiped his lips. Now everybody knows he's just one of the boys. But this unity is more than skin deep. This same Goering with Krupp von Polen und Halbach. Krupp, armament king. the king of tanks and all weapons of extermination. During the Krupp Works Jubilee, any Nazi who was anybody was there. Long ago, the Nazis had promised to put the squeeze on the profits of capitalism, and now they're lining up to squeeze Trupp's hand. Here's Himmler, head of the Gestapo, like the others, waiting his turn. Now it's come. Oh, how nice. Let's see that again. Oh, yes. This is an illustration of, Rudolf Hess, Hitler's second in command. As I was saying, this shows very clearly what the real nature of the Nazis' economic program was. Here's the Krupp family. The young man on the right, there he is. He is the heir, the one who runs the Krupp trusts today. The one who's making a speech is the old Krupp. I wonder how he's going to wind it up. Heil Hitler. That's how he does it. Another demonstration of unity, building the new highways. It looks innocent enough, but these are strategic highways, the first steps on the road to war. Now Hitler is about to make a speech in his usual overexcited style. He starts off in low key and gradually works himself up until he's screaming. There he goes. He's yelling. The things he's screaming about are fairly simple. Everyone must work, everyone must toil, build roads. In a word, workmen must work. All this could have been said calmly, but this is the way his public likes him. Achtung, the first load of specially loosened earth. He digs with his own Führer's hands. Let's go over that just once more so that you can admire the man behind Hitler. There he is. There? There? And there. The building of the second new highway is inaugurated by Goering. The third by Hess. But the building of a smaller road is inaugurated by a small-scale Führer, and he seems to be rather lazy at digging. Not much heart into it. What? Is that all? Oh, well, we can all go home. An industrial fair. Here you can get a pretty good idea of just what Germany is doing. Submarines. Tanks. Planes. Even bombs. And on top of it all, Hitler. My mother was an ordinary woman, but she gave Germany a great son. My cap, front view. Profile. Me against the mountains. Against the sea. Me and the little squirrel. And the little girl. Me and the lions. And here I am amongst my worshippers from the people. The cake that they presented to me on the occasion of my birthday, they searched the cooks just to make sure. Another present, socks knitted for me by German women. I and Siegfried by an anonymous painter. A pity, though, that I am peeping from under Siegfried's armpit. It should have been the other way around. Here I'm in a good temper. Here in a bad temper. But I don't remember what it was all about. Smiling again. That's Mussolini in the background, but don't bother about him. An autograph? Well, somebody's back will do. arms folded on my chest. Later on, I changed my style. Here's a rare shot. I'm inspecting the guard of honor in tails. The tailor was rewarded. By the way, the tailcoat really fits perfectly. And now, I'm off. I'm making a speech. In this speech, by the way, Hitler declared that he owed everything to hard work and perseverance. Imagine that. He complained that he hadn't had an easy life and had even gone hungry. But he set himself a goal and stubbornly surmounted all the obstacles in his path to reach it. No, it's not the highbrows who gave me strength, Hitler went on, but the workers and the peasants. What could be more natural in this 20th century than to rely on the workers and the peasants? During his career, Hitler made an enormous amount of speeches with little meaning, but delivered with much sound and fury. Furthermore, all his private talks during dinners and banquets were recorded and became an inexhaustible treasury of wisdom. Hitler said that Germans only were the master race and would be called upon to rule the whole world. The Slavs, he said, were born to be slaves. As for the Russians, most of them should be exterminated, and those remaining alive needn't be taught to read or write. The Ukrainians should be given bead necklaces, like the natives of any colony. The Arabs were greasy monkeys, and the Italians lazy. There was only one decent Romanian, Antonescu. Switzerland was a pimple on the face of Europe, and if the German people did not show a fearless spirit, they too should be exterminated. I alone, Hitler declared, I alone can decide which nation should survive and which nation should be exterminated. In this very speech, Hitler said, some say the Führer is one thing and the party another. No, my friends, he went on, I am the party. This statement of Hitler's was greeted with such a thundering ovation that he had to wait until it was over before going on. And just as I feel that I am part and parcel of the party is part and parcel of myself. Just think of it. The Nazi party becomes a part of Adolf Hitler. Too bad he never said which part. He ended his speech with these words, and should I die one day, my spirit will live on. See, Kyle? Many were the great men who folded their arms across their chests. So Hitler ended by deciding that he should change, find something new south of the belt. He stubbornly stuck to it. If his right arm was busy, he used the left. And it spread like wildfire. First Himmler, the Gestapo chief, Gentle Heinrich, as Hitler used to call him. It was harder for Goering because of his figure. Röhm and Hess followed suit. Hess is on the right, Röhm on the left. Röhm commanded the chalk troops and was one of Hitler's closest associates. But one day on parade, he slipped up. Hitler, out of politeness, asked him up into his car. Röhm accepted the invitation. He probably had not read attentively enough the passage in Mein Kampf, which says, the party must have only one Führer and not two. Besides, Röhm was disliked in army circles. They feared his shock troops. In the end, it was found advisable to shoot him, and Hitler's personal photographer had to spoil a few memorable snapshots, like this one. But enough about Hitler, always Hitler. Now, we should say a few words about Mussolini. Here he comes. He was, after all, the first one. Fascism itself is an Italian word. Mussolini invented this salute, and Hitler just imitated him. Mussolini was the first to perform with a pick. Later on, Hitler performed with a shovel. Besides, Mussolini showed off on a threshing machine, something which was quite beyond Hitler's possibilities. And as for personal publicity, Duce, by the way, means leader or Führer. Mussolini was even better at it than Hitler himself. You won't see a hoarding like this in the Third Reich. But as to torch parades, Mussolini slipped up a bit on organization. You feel they might well set fire to Rome. Hitler once said that Mussolini was undoubtedly a direct descendant of the Caesars. Looks like it. There's his portrait in the background, rising up above the crowd. Very funny. Here's the Duce making a speech. Most inspirational. Just look at those gestures. But what's up now? It's very interesting. Why has the right-hand corner of the screen been blotted out? If you'll notice, it's been completely blotted out. There must be somebody standing there who annoyed Mussolini badly. And the fascist cameraman decided to black out half the screen so that the person standing there remained invisible. Probably it's King Victor Emmanuel standing there. Mussolini despised him for being so short. He was jealous of him, disliked him. Oh. There. It's not what he's saying that's interesting. It's meant to be watched, not listened to. Just look at that face. What a comedian. What a beauty. He really is tops. There. Oh? But as to this, Mussolini undoubtedly copied Hitler. Oh, well, let's take leave of Mussolini. We'll first show you some busts of him, as we're now about to take up the subject of fascist art. Perhaps you think this is another parade. No, it's Hitler visiting an art exhibit. The masterpieces on display were selected by Hitler himself. Take a good look at this soldier's face. Here's Hitler again. Hitler again. And Hitler again. A bomb thrown to Goering. This marble girl seems to be saying, what can I do about it? Some of the works were not shown due to their size. And here's what was not shown, what could not have been squeezed in. We're in Thorax studio, the foremost sculptor of the Third Reich. Hitler said, when we march the representatives of the vanquished nations through Berlin, they must be awestruck by the grandeur of our monuments. Well, they were big enough. Tons of muscle, but not much intellect. Horses were the only animals worth sculpting. Now here's something special. The conquering warrior. Monuments just like this, only 100 feet high, were to guard the boundaries of the new Reich. The Ural, the White Sea, the Black Sea, and stand on the Caucasian peaks. And the statue of the slave is ready too. That means you and me. And the conqueror's head. No use expecting mercy from him. Goethe and Schiller between two swastikas. In this little house in Weimar is being held an exhibit of German books. It was visited by Goebbels. Well, of course, in the place of honor, a display of Goebbels' own works. No trouble was spared. The author is pleased. As to the other works on show, well, let's have a look around. Hitler here. Hitler there. Hitler in Italy. Hitler at home. And here the author themselves are led into lunch, discreetly escorted. They're reasonably well fed. As to their worth, enough said. What will remain of their works? Well, my guess is as good as yours. Now they lend an ear to Goebbels' instructions, what they should write about, how they should write it. They imbibe these instructions thoroughly, and artistic gestation will be well on the way. And now let's see what goes on in the theater and on the screen. After all, people must occasionally relax and feast their eyes on beauty.
Ein Vogel sang im Eschenwald.
Very, very sweet. The difference between these girls and, say, American, English, or French girls is only in the waistline. The girls of the Third Reich had to be, well, they had to be plump, bosomy, and broad-hipped. And here's Marika Röck, the brightest star of Hitler's screen. A little sex thrown in. Life was not too easy for a German under the Third Reich. He worked hard and long. Food was scarce. Goering said butter was fattening, so a substitute had to be found. And here's a perfectly suitable substitute. By the way, they liked it. They even still like it. I'm afraid they'll still be liking it for a long time to come. A comedy act. The standard for hips is still the same.
Man sieht uns stets gemeinsam. Wir sind nicht gern nur einsam, weil wir zwei Zwillingsschwestern, zwei Nordwest-Schwestern. Ja, Brust, singen, kann singen, alles müssen wir doch mitmachen, weil wir zwei Zwillingsschwestern, zwei Nordwest-Schwestern.
But the standard for vamps is quite another thing. Here is a vamp. A vamp should be emaciated. That's the rule. You have a look at one of these, and then you go back to your wife and worries to dull everyday work.
Musst du erleben, sie schenkt dir Stunden, die du nie vergisst.
But the most important, the main preoccupation of the Third Reich's art was this, the parade. This was real art. Here, and nowhere else, flights of fancy and inspired creative genius were crowned with magnificent success. A first-class soloist. Look at the ecstatic abandon of this virtuoso. By the way, his name is Richthofen, commander of the Condor Legion. It was he who bombed Guernica, Madrid, and later Stalingrad. Bravo! More! But let's forget this sinister comedy for a while and have a look at the children of the Third Reich. Fine children. Little people who enjoy playing and listening to the barrel organ. True, it's playing the Horst Wessel Lied, the Nazi anthem. But children, of course, don't know what it is yet. The sun. A lady. Daddy and Mummy. A trumpet and a drum. Little boys always like to draw soldiers, bayonets, rifles, knives, a tank, a swastika. At school, the first words in their copybook, Heil Hitler. All reading begins with that. More homework. Stormtroopers march past. We salute the flag. Here's a pretty poem for the Führer's birthday. Wherever German hearts beat strongest, where German hands are put to work, wherever German children laugh for joy, we offer thee our hearts. Thou art the Führer, our country's savior. Thou art hope and loyalty and love and faith. I love thee with all my heart. My wish is to belong to thee, to serve thee always day and night as a brave and faithful soldier should. Notation, not for reading, but for learning by heart. Now one learns to stand at attention, gazing at the Führer, drinking in each of his words, for he is going to address German youth. What does he demand from German youth? German youth must be strong, agile, taut as a bowstring, swift as a greyhound, and as hard as Krupp's iron. That's all. Nothing more is expected from you at present, and the young people rejoice. The children's bodies spell out the words, "We belong to thee." But the children have not yet grasped that it is shameful to belong to someone, even to the Führer himself. They gaze at him adoringly, and yet every hour of every day, for long years to come, they will have to hear that he is infallible, that he is always right, that he is great, that he is the savior, that he is faith, hope, love, and wisdom. Hitler said, a boy should from childhood learn to take a beating and be accustomed to cruelty, and he saw to it that they did. Here they are, becoming used to it. Just look at those faces, chosen by the cameraman. They're learning to take a beating. He said one day, at 4 years old, we give the child a flag. And from that moment on, without realizing it, it becomes our tool. And that goes on to the day of its death. They must become the clay that can be turned into anything. Grains of sand. Here's the last stage, the most important of all, pledging allegiance to Adolf Hitler. Let's listen to this pledge.
Diesen heiligen Eid, dass ich dem Führer des Deutschen Reiches und Volkes, Adolf Hitler, dem obersten Befehlshaber der Wehrmacht,
The oath is being sworn by yesterday's schoolboys. They've learned all the stock phrases by heart. They know Hitler is infallible. They'll die with his name on their lips. They'll kill in his name. They'll plunder in his name. But not only soldiers took the oath. Nurses, employees, civil servants, postmen, and railway workers took it too. The whole of Germany pledged allegiance to Adolf Hitler because the whole of Germany had to pledge itself to him. It goes without saying that all Nazi Party members took the oath. The oath was short and to the point. Here it is, word for word. I swear allegiance to Adolf Hitler, to him personally, and to all the chiefs he will see fit to set above me. I swear to carry out unconditionally any of their orders. That's all. No mention of Germany, of the fatherland, or of the people. He swears to carry out unconditionally any order from any source. Now you can put your cap on. In fact, men swear to renounce being human beings. Of their own free will, they renounce the rights and the duties of any man. The right and duty to think for themselves. Yes, there still was another Germany. These people can still remember the fall of the Kaiser's Empire, the German Revolution of 1918. It was just a year after the October Revolution in Russia. They'll remember the vehicles loaded with armed workers and soldiers, the milling crowds on the streets, the meetings, Liebknecht's speeches. All revolutions look alike. The people are the same. There's freedom in the air. But they also remember how the revolution ended. Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg were murdered. The blood and the tears. They worked. They always worked. Germans are hard and tireless workmen. There they are. They remembered the impressive workers' demonstrations of the 20s. They were much younger then. They believed in the future of a socialist Germany. They took to the streets. Perhaps one of them carried this banner saying, "Fascism means starvation and war." Or perhaps he had seen Teilmann. In these slums, they remember how the demonstrations always ended. The wounded were carried here, and sometimes the dead. The German working class was split up. It was easy to get rid of it that way. And so it was decimated, annihilated, and he won. No, I'm not saying the German people were blind. They were betrayed. And since one has to live under Hitler, one has to work. Any kind of work to live. These are German workers. Maybe some of them remember the Rote Front's last demonstration. The Red Front by then had been outlawed, and parading in the streets was almost sure death or deportation. How many of these are still alive today? They vanished behind barbed wires. Yes, there once was another Germany. One of the Nazi commandments began with the words, "You are nothing." We tried hard to find some kind of shots to show how people lived during these years. They couldn't have been shouting "Sieg Heil" after all the time. But in more than 2 million feet of film devoted to the history of Nazism, all we could find were these few rather insignificant pictures. After all, is it worthwhile to film people if nobody is anybody? True, the commandment went on to say, "You are nothing, but your nation, your people, is everything." But it's hard to believe that the nation is everything when any part of this same nation is nothing. But the time has come. Black crowds of SS have invaded the streets. Something is up. Thousands of army nurses. What for? Just an attack of mass hysteria? The newsreel cameras are whirring. All is clear. The Fuhrer's here. Now we can start filming. And so, you're nothing, but the nation is everything. But Hitler lived to call the nation the masses. And the masses, Hitler said, should be treated like women. And women, said Hitler, willingly surrender to strength. And it's no use appealing to reason when dealing with the masses. Far better work on their basic feelings. Here he is at work on basic feelings. All this is a put-up job. The kiddies are carried out, complete with flowers. Very touching. The saw act is over, we can move on. Not a put-up job this time. This other bouquet wasn't rehearsed. All right, we can go on. Not a put-up job at all, a plea. No matter, big smile, safety first, of course. Take him away and on we go. To work on the basic feelings of these same masses. The masses are unreliable and lazy, said and even wrote Hitler. They dislike reading, they dislike thinking, too. They must have but one enemy and one God. Here is their God. Then they will follow you because alone they are nothing, and together they are the masses. And the masses must be handled like women, and women like to surrender to strength. Also, said Hitler, a healthy feeling of fear is good for the masses. For the information of future candidates of Führerdom, taking into consideration modern methods of propaganda, it is an easy and practical method for being deified alive. The time has now come for Nazism to put into practice what it preached. It started in Spain. The Führer commands, we obey. Now it's already Poland. The Führer commands, we obey. We took the oath. It is verboten to think. Warsaw burns. The Thinker by Rodin. $10,000 ago, an unknown artist made this other thinker. He seems to be looking into the future. And this mural painting is 20,000 years old. Man still lived in caves, dressed in skins, and used stone axes. But he was a great creator and a great artist. He understood the beauty of lines, the perfection of forms, and the expression of movement. The colors on the walls of this cave have faded a little, although the animals depicted vanished from the face of the earth 20,000 years ago. Primitive man even knew figurative art. But let us come back to the 20th century. Could this possibly be the image of our times? Can it be that these pictures will become a monument to our epoch? Ruined buildings appear peaceful and even beautiful to the airman. Seen from the air, human beings look like ants or cockroaches, and their extermination goes off without a qualm. Only yesterday, these people lived in peace. They worked, they loved, and they dreamed. Now they're being penned behind barbed wires. They do not understand where they're being driven. We'll soon find out what fate has in store for them. Up to this stage, war was supposed to be just a happy romp. Merry boys like these marched all over Europe, marched and grinned. They marched through Belgium, Holland, and Denmark. They stamped over the sidewalks of Paris, over the Balkans, and like tourists, climbed over the Acropolis. The morning of June 22nd, 1941. On that peaceful morning, Berliners found out that war had begun with the Soviet Union. Even so, this morning was just the same as any other. It looked so ordinary and peaceful that no one could have guessed that just then the fate of the Third Reich hung in the balance. Even less did anyone suspect that fighting had already started a few hours ago without warning. And that for several hours, bombs had been falling on Soviet territory. Moscow today, minding their own business, just like those who woke up on that June morning in 1941, when everything seemed so simple, so humdrum, so peaceful, so quiet. Each of them carries a scar, an open wound. Some lost a son, a brother, a father, or a mother. Some lost their whole family. Some saw their homes destroyed, their lives smashed to pieces. But only the present counts. What you feel today, this very minute. They think, they love, they talk, they live. These are the most important things in life. Who are these two? Or these others? Students? Future cybernetic experts or chemists? Builders of rockets, perhaps? What are they talking about? What's worrying these two? What got him into such a state? And this young lady, is she explaining some difficult scientific problem or simply planning a country walk? Or these two, maybe they're research workers of the Scientific Institute discussing an important problem while the little girl wants to go and play. Or maybe they're just having a good gossip. But the little girl is eager to go play. She can't wait till the other lady leaves, and the mother is so absorbed that she doesn't even notice that her daughter has escaped. Or these three. Nothing could be more important to them just now than their daily life, their problems and friendships, and that they never have to live through what happened in June 1941. When day turned into night. And these merry men trampled all over Russian soil. They were so charming, so sympathetic, so handsome. They had such good manners. They worked and rested and went back to work. We know their names. Photographs were found in their breast pockets. Pictures of themselves, their wives, their mothers, their children, and things like this. And this. They kept them in pocketbooks, next to pictures of their children and mothers. How low can a man fall to carry these things as if they were pleasant souvenirs? From the private collection of a Gestapo chief. A brother and sister. She's already undressed, and he's undressing. A moment later, they'll be dead. Look what this funny fellow had his picture taken with, what he kept as a souvenir. Photographs attached to the official report on the mass atrocities at Vlau. But even at such times, human beings could still remain human beings. A 20th century saint. People were driven like cattle like people. The first shipment of food from the Ukraine arrives in Berlin. The Minister of Supplies in person is present to meet the train. A solemn occasion like this was fully reported, probably to stress the life of plenty the Third Reich enjoyed. At that time, the Kraft durch Freude, Strength Through Joy organization was most successful. This organization took care of excursions, sports, and relaxations. One of the main excursions was the visit of the Warsaw Ghetto. Here is the bridge spanning the two walls encircling the ghetto. 500,000 people were herded into here to die of starvation. These pictures were taken by an amateur photographer. I don't know who he was. I can't understand what pleasure or what comfort one could derive from a visit to this ghetto. Occasionally, a few of the older children managed to escape and get some food for their starving mothers and sisters. This is how it always ended. Even in the ghetto, children created. There were no pencils, so they made paper dolls of torn paper, True, this dolly didn't come from this ghetto. Nothing is left of the Warsaw ghetto, not even dust. These drawings come from another ghetto. The children drew pictures, remembered the past, and the past seemed bright. The children are born to be happy. They looked around them and dreamed of leaving the ghetto like that. But this is the way they left. Janusz Korczak, a well-known writer and teacher, went into the ghetto and refused to leave when given the chance. Until the very end, he stayed with the children, and he left in a train like this one. To the last, he stayed with the children, telling them fairy tales, and when he was found dead in the gas chamber, he was still clasping dead children in his arms. Four million human beings passed through this door. 4 million. Convoy has arrived. These pictures were taken by SS personnel, rabid camera fiends, even though it was strictly forbidden to photograph concentration camps. This is the selection process. To the right, those who will live in the camp. To the left, those who will be exterminated right away. To the right, the younger, the healthier. To the left, the old, the feeble, and the sick. Children under 3 feet, 8.5 inches to the left. Some of them knew and tried to stand on their toes when being measured. They were beaten with rods. No cheating allowed. All was stripped to the skin. And then, the whole world knows what happened next. The gas chambers and the ovens. This is all that's left of the convoy. Those who still had to live in the camp were supplied with uniforms. 3 weeks later or so, this is what they looked like. Each one was photographed. Full face. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of these files were found. Here are some we selected so that you'll be able to look into their eyes. To look into the eyes of those who ended up in Auschwitz. They are reduced to ashes and dust, but their eyes live on. Their eyes live on. Their eyes still gaze into ours. Each of those who worked in the camp netted the Third Reich a profit of roughly 1,500 marks, plus 200 marks more for the so-called rational disposal of corpses and personal effects. Deduction made of the cost of gassing and incineration. The Third Reich made an average profit of 1,631 marks per head, including value of hair, teeth, bones, and ashes. Here's the camp commandant's house, his wife, his relaxation, his friends, his work. The daily log of Professor Joseph Kramer, Doctor of Medicine and Philosophy, stationed at Auschwitz, reads, "I witnessed a special operation today. It's worse than Dante's Inferno. My new boots, trousers, and tunic arrived from Berlin. More about the operation. This time it was about women too weak to be of any use. They knew what was coming, and the SS had a bit of trouble with them. For dinner, we had tamara soup, 1/2 a chicken, all the beer we wanted, and ice cream. A lovely evening spent with the commandant. At Majdanek, there remained 8,000 pair of shoes, which were not shipped out due to lack of time. The president of the IG Farbenindustrie Chemical Trusts wrote, 'We urgently need a new shipment of Polish girls. Our present stock is exhausted. Please see to it that the chosen material is in good health.' The commandant answered, 'The new shipment of girls is on its way. It's the best we can do. The goods are of standard quality.' But Majdanek, Auschwitz, and Treblinka were only trial camps and training schools for the huge extermination camps that Himmler was planning to set up beyond the Urals. There, it was planned to exterminate 60 million Russians, not to mention other nationalities. Blueprints had already been drawn up, complete with access routes. Orders for the equipment of this gigantic enterprise passed. And large firms of the Third Reich look forward to big business. They weep for joy, wiping their eyes. I don't mean to say that it's because of the gas chambers. They probably don't even know about them. And had they been told about them, they wouldn't have believed it. And should they have actually seen them, it would not have been hard to convince them that they were necessary for the good of the Third Reich. This is pathological. It's mass hysteria. Stretching out their arms toward their God, if only just to touch his little finger. Yes, in spite of all this, there was another Germany. This youth put to the pillory. A placard on his chest reads, "I said no. I am a traitor to my people." So there were some Germans who said no to Hitler. There were some who, year after year, stubbornly said no to Nazism. It takes a lot of courage to die, but maybe it takes even more to say no when everyone around says yes, to remain a human being and carry on with the struggle when everyone around is no longer human, to think when thinking is verboten. Look into their fine faces. There were not many of them, but they always did exist. These people were not only the pride of Germany, they were the hope and the future of the German nation. Every year, they strenuously train for the winter campaign. Slap your knees like this, then your hips, then a little jumping around and you will feel fine. You won't even feel the cold. In actual fact, it did not quite turn out that way. A German caught in the Stalingrad Inferno wrote to his wife, "What happened is partly my fault, of course. I bear only 1/70 millionth of Germany's guilt. But that 1/70 millionth is costing me my life." If only everyone had reasoned this way, not only in circumstances like these, If only humanity as a whole had always reasoned this way. $20 million lives. 20 million. That was the price the Soviet Union paid so that fascism should disappear from the earth. The war now sweeps westward like a tidal wave. $20 million. They died in the belief that fascism would never rise again anywhere. On May 8, 1965, on their own initiative, war veterans gathered at Moscow's Red Square looking for their comrades of World War II. Some found them, others didn't, like this veteran of the 21st Artillery Regiment. No one came. This woman doctor found a fellow whose life she had long ago saved. There they are, remembering the past. The girl, too young to remember the war, listens. This one has found some of his old buddies. And maybe it's the happiest day of his life. But there's still a long way to go before this day dawns. So much has to be done. So much still has to be lived through. Kiev, then Warsaw, across Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, Poland, before invading Germany, reaching Berlin. And they die. They die by the thousands. Total war or surrender, thunders Goebbels. Do you want surrender? No. Do you want total war? Yes, we do. Total war. All you've seen up to now is not total war. Total war means this. This woman, these children shot down at close range. Point blank with a pistol. Point blank with a pistol. How many killers had to be bred to shoot point blank, to gas, to burn, or machine gun? Millions, millions, millions of women and children. How many cold-blooded robots willing to wipe out what centuries achieved? But total war was no help. This is the Moscow racecourse in the summer of 1944, and these are German prisoners. These are the men who were entrusted with Hitler's July order The Slavs must become an inexhaustible reserve of slaves in the spirit of ancient Egypt and Babylon. And the people of Moscow can stare at these would-be slave owners, these foremen, these landowners, these governors. And this East Prussian butcher can have a look at these Soviet soldiers. These are the men who turned the tide of the most merciless, the bloodiest, fiercest war in the history of mankind. What's so special about them? Nothing. One day Hitler promised, in 10 years' time, the Berliners won't be able to recognize their town. And for once, he told the truth. But the swastikas and the posters are still there, force of habit. Our walls are laid low, but not our hearts. And Goebbels again speaks of total war, the same old speech and the same audience. But something new has appeared in the listeners' faces. Look closely. They're thinking. They're probably not even listening to Goebbels. They're thinking. Sieg Heil, just force of habit. Sieg Heil. It's still the same oath. Yes, the oath is still the same, but the people have changed. They're thinking. The drums roll and Goebbels reviews the troops. He's trying to find who else he can send to the front, if only to prolong his own life for a few minutes. Draft everybody, the children, the old men, the women. Anybody can learn to use a grenade launcher. Nothing to it, madam. Take aim, that's right. Push the button, and there you are. Hitler was filmed. He too is reviewing the troops, scraping the bottom of the barrel in a hopeless search for cannon fodder. This lad will do. And this one too, of course. But it's too late. War has come to Berlin. The Third Reich is in its death throes, but till the last minute, men are still dying by the thousands. This is the end. Grass grows, a new generation is born, where walls crumbled. Today's children go to school. This is Berlin. These two little girls don't want to go to school. They'd like to run around every tree on the way. Here's another tree to go around. Here's a little boy. Oh, this is interesting. Worth stopping for. What do they know about fascism? Even these older girls. What do they know about war, except what they heard from their parents? And what do these young Parisians know about war and fascism? They want to dance, and dance again. And fall in love. After all, they've got the right to. They're nice young people. Look at that pretty girl. Do you know who these young singers are? Hitler's niece and Mussolini's son-in-law. Times have changed. Everything changes, grows, goes forward. New forms of sport appear. And new forms of art. Quite pretty. It gets shown. It even caught the eyes of connoisseurs, particularly the whole. Sold. This too is probably sold. A beauty contest for men. A really fine specimen. Youth wants love. They want children. They want girls and boys. But this could happen to boys. Once more, they are trying to turn men into beasts. Looks as if they're succeeding. Sometimes it seems that this book has been unearthed, and that with it, these living corpses have crawled out from somewhere underground wearing Hitler's decorations. These former SS men, these nice boys. They'd like to look grand and even forbidding, just as they did long ago. But now, it's just clowning. They're only funny as this aging and balding Mosley. English history passed him over. He made no mark on it, but he still preaches fascism, and there are still people to cheer him. And the police are all set to protect him because he's going to come out. Just a minute. Now, there he's come. Ah, it started. They're hitting him. He's been beaten up for more than 30 years. English traditionalism, one must admit, has its points. So that, you see, he now has to stage his appearances from undercover. This way, it's harder to punch his face. He can still smile, though. The casualties are neatly arranged on the sidelines like this. Funny, isn't it? Maybe this too is funny. These desecrated graves in a Jewish cemetery. These emblems, these inscriptions. We didn't get rid of enough of you. Or this. You think the Führer is dead? We don't. Somehow I don't find this funny. But some people do. Swastikas. Here's the Führer of American fascists, Rockwell. Another swastika. Here's the Führer of the Swedish fascists. More and more swastikas. In Chile, in France, in Portugal. Swastikas everywhere. How many of them are there? Meeting in front of the White House in Washington. And the placards read, "Free Rudolf Hess." True, this is old-time fascism, quite unfashionable now. It no longer counts in broader politics. New-style fascism no longer stages parades like these, no longer wears swastikas, and no longer lights torches like these. It's become most difficult to spot and to film. However, it does exist and is most dangerous. But the greatest danger lies in these prominent people, sure of themselves, self-satisfied and smiling. They are the owners of West German industrial trusts, the very same that long ago brought Hitler to power. If they wish it, they can easily set up another Hitler. In the meantime, they play a waiting game. Take a look at the dolphins. It has recently been found that the dolphin's brain is as heavy and as complex as a man's. They can even talk in their own dolphin's language. At any rate, they're extremely intelligent and very kind, kinder than most human beings. It's been suggested that they be used for military purposes as radars. In the meantime, they playfully pull little boats around. The generals can do without them for the time being. Hitler knew nothing of this technique. Most fortunately, he didn't have it. If Hitler had had this, do you think he would have hesitated a minute to make use of it? What about humanity? I don't know. Maybe this is all that would be left of humanity. War doesn't really need dolphins right now, with all the armaments and means at its disposal. But I still believe in man's wisdom. Man was born good. No children are born bad. Children all over the world are good. All depends on what you and I make them into what you and I will turn them. Once upon a time, there was a grandfather and a grandmother who had a speckled hen. The speckled hen laid an egg. Not an ordinary egg, but a golden egg. Grandpa tried to break it, and so did Grandma, but it wouldn't break. A little mouse came running in and waggled its tail, and the egg fell off the table and broke. Grandpa cried, and Grandma cried, but the little hen clucked, "Don't cry, Grandma. Don't cry, Grandma. I'll lay another egg for you. Not an ordinary egg, but a golden egg."